Today we talk about Starship.
Welcome back on the SpaceInfo podcast. Here we talk about space and everything related to it. If you are passionate about space, astronomy, technology and everything about it, you can join all our social platforms at the SpaceInfo Club or our website at www.spaceinfo.club, where tons of content and a community of experts are there waiting for you. This is the SpaceInfo Club.
The first test flight of the biggest and most powerful rocket ever built is in the books now, and what a dramatic and nail-biting for SpaceX it was. Indeed, I don't know if you have seen the live event or some videos of the highlights of the launch, but it was amazing. Well, that day there were two main goals. One was bringing Starship first stage booster, known as the Super Heavy, down for a soft splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico and achieve a controlled re-entry of the 165-foot tall, and for the European friends 50 meters upper stage, which is the Starship itself, and basically it can be called also the ship. But the Super Heavy booster and the ship appeared to make their water landings, sending spectators in the surroundings wild. The video was amazing. Well, just to give some data for the people who don't know Starship or don't have familiarity with the ship itself, you can see that the overall rocket is something like 400 feet, 120 meters about, with a diameter of 9 meters, and the payload capacity for sure, not today, not in the flight test, but in the nominal launches of something like 150 tons, depending on the final orbit and some orbital parameters. The Starship itself, which is the upper stage of the overall tandem configuration, is 50 meters high, with a diameter again of 9 meters, a propellant capacity of 1,200 tons, with a thrust of 1,500 and payload capacity again of 150 tons. Again, the Super Heavy booster is 70 meters high, about 9 meters diameter, with a propellant capacity of 3,400 tons, with equipped with 33 engines at the base, and which are the Raptor engines. A few words in a minute. During the fourth test flight, 32 over 33 of them performed nominally, both in the ascending and in the descending phase, where not all of them were activated, but and this is a nominal procedure, but the overall landing leg was performed nominally and successfully, with an amazing landing in the Gulf of Mexico waters. Well, before going on, the Raptor engine is quite peculiar. It has a diameter of 1.3 meters on, let's say, on the bell shape, but it can vary depending on the configuration. If it will be designed for Earth atmospheric flight, for orbital flight, and things like that. We have already said these considerations in other videos. Let us know if you want to hear again, but not today. The height of this engine is 3.1 meters, and the thrust is, as you can see, is something like 507 kilopounds force, which is basically amazing, considering also it flies a mixture of methane and liquid oxygen, which is a relatively new mixture designed for Mars flights. But back on the topic of today, thanks to a video which is basically the highlights of the flight, we can see now the countdown. We are almost in 33 seconds into the lift-off. You can see the gantry and the launch pad, and as I recall that the launch pad and the steel structure was completely redesigned after the very first flight of the Starship, because the 33 engine of the Super Heavy booster melted down the structure. Now we are going into the lift-off in 5 seconds, and again the lift-off, as you will see, now the the lighting sequence of the engines. You will see now in a few seconds. Okay, it happened now that one of the 33 engines was simply shut down due to external causes. SpaceX haven't said anything up to now, and now the rocket is lifting off into the clouds, and with this amazing and huge flame out into the sky, and this is amazing. Now the rocket is climbing into the upper layers of the atmosphere, 30 seconds in the flight. In a few minutes, almost all the propellant will end up, and Elon Musk celebrated also on X the success of the mission with a tweet saying successful soft landing of the Starship Super Heavy rocket booster. Because yes, spoiler, the booster landed successfully and in a vertical configuration into the waters of the Gulf of Mexico. And on the Starship vehicle, meanwhile, the booster was landing, appeared that the landing burn was already preparing to happen, with the flap suffering a burn-through damage during the descent, but the camera was just transmitting amazing images to the people on the ground. Well, despite the loss of many tiles and damaged flap, Starship made it all the way to a soft landing in the ocean. This is the second tweet, the second X post on the social, again by Elon Musk, congratulating to all the SpaceX team. As we can see now, we are still in the climbing phase. If you're watching on the video, we are something like 2,700 kilometers per hour at 30 kilometers in the atmosphere. Max Q point already passed since a few seconds. Again, max Q point is the point where we have the maximum dynamic pressure, which is the product between the square of the velocity and also the density of air. So the faster you go, the higher will be the dynamic pressure, but you also have to consider the density of the atmosphere. So the higher you go, the lower is the density and the lower the dynamic pressure on your vehicle will be. So you have to optimize for a specific altitude, which you can find by almost simple calculation, where you want to have the point of maximum dynamic pressure, and therefore you will optimize the thrust level for that. Usually you are optimizing your thrust level to that point in order to have the maximum thrust where it is most required. Now at this phase we are seeing the hot staging, which is a maneuver, as you have seen in the diagram below in the screen, the maneuver that Starship performs, where 3 of the 33 engines on the booster are still basically exerting thrust, so they are keeping pushing the overall structure, and without stop pushing we have a separation of the Starship with the booster. This is called hot staging because you don't have a complete shut off of the engine. Once the two are separated, again the middle ring of the engines in the booster reignites, and after an amazing flip maneuver, the booster basically heads towards Earth, and the Starship continues climbing into orbit. We are at an amazing speed of almost 7,000 kilometers per hour at an altitude of 107 kilometers now. The combination of liquid oxygen and methane is keeping burning in both the spacecraft. Now all the engines of the booster have been shut off, as you can see. And now let's skip a little into this flight. As you see, the other time there were some problems, but under the point of view of the EV booster, because some problems occurred with the control of the landing booster, which landed, let's say, at the right coordinate more or less, but with some problems in the last seconds, so impacted some strong in the ground, and so the landing was for sure not acceptable. This time you see that things will go a little different. The descending leg is continuing. Now we are 45 kilometers above the ground for the booster, 145 kilometers in the atmosphere for the Starship, traveling at something like 14,000 kilometers per hour. and we are seeing now that the spacecraft, the booster is still going going towards the Earth, only with aerodynamic control. As you can see now from the images, the hypersonic fins are controlling the booster basically, but without the deceleration given by the thrust of the engines. We are now 5 kilometers and 1,700 kilometers per hour into the atmosphere. For sure the density of air is quite strong now. We are 2 kilometers above the ground, and in a few seconds, basically now, all the engines apart one deputed to the landing are just ignited. 3 engines. We are decelerating. We are 100 kilometers, and in a few seconds we'll just stop in the water. Perfect vertical configuration. We have a complete successful landing after 7 minutes and 25 seconds from the launch. The booster have landed, and after lifting off, performing a perfect offstage of the spacecraft, and now it has landed. The crowd is wild basically in the SpaceX premises. Now back into the atmosphere, in the upper layers of the atmosphere, 145 kilometers, almost constant altitude. The spacecraft is traveling at 23,000 kilometers, almost 24,000 kilometers per hour, and it will land back into the Indian Ocean, performing a almost perfect landing into this ocean. And now, thanks to this other video, again, by the writing on the video views by Starlink, we know that all the services by SpaceX were exploited to give the possibility to all the people to assist to the video and to the live stream in orbit. You can already see that the altitude have decreased. We are now at 94 kilometers above the surface, traveling at something like 26,700 kilometers per hour in the atmosphere. The mission elapsed time is 46 and 40 seconds, minutes and seconds, and the flight test is the 4th of the Starship again for the people who has just connected now. And we are seeing now that there is some plasma around the spacecraft, hot plasma, which is again, as you know for sure, due to the drag towards the atmosphere of the spacecraft. We are something like 90 kilometers above the surface. We are the density of the atmosphere is quite very low. I would say quite very low, but the speed is so high. You are so fast that the drag becomes very high. You will see Elon Musk and all the SpaceX guys will say that some tiles will have detached from the spacecraft. We don't know if due to the extreme heat, so during the flight itself, or when splashing down, but we can see now that the spacecraft is traveling in the atmosphere. We have seen a light movement of the flap of the spacecraft itself, trying to control aerodynamically its re-entry. We are just now skipping a little forward into the video. We are seeing now that we are 53 minutes into flight. The speed is again quite high. We are now at 22,000 kilometers per hour. It's very high. The altitude is decreasing very slightly. Again, SpaceX Starship is something like a space plane, so you don't experience an almost vertical descent, even though Soyuz and also the other capsule don't have a straight vertical descent. Neither in emergency condition the trajectory is never vertical, but for sure for space plane it is very gentle towards the ground. We know that the spacecraft will splash down in the Indian Ocean with a different view. Now we see that the flap is still intact now. There is no visible damage. We only see the hot plasma traveling around the spacecraft and at an amazing speed of almost 22,000 kilometers per hour. Again, skipping now the video, maybe too much. We now can no more see clearly what's happening. There is a burn through probably in the spacecraft. It seems there is a detachment of the structure, probably is the secondary structure, so the fairing of the spacecraft itself, which is detaching. As you may have noticed, there is no thrust from the engine because it's useless. The spacecraft is controlling nominally as expected, only thanks to the aerodynamic forces. We are now at 12,000 kilometers per hour and 50 kilometers above the ground. Let's keep now a little more, and yeah, now that's the radio blackout, and again at 2,000 kilometers per hour, 26 kilometers above the ground, 1 hour and 3 minutes into the flight. Starship is still performing nominally as expected. Things are going good. Again, let's now get back into the final phases of the launch. We are seeing now there is some visible damage on the flap, probably the right flap, no, the left flap of the spacecraft. The attitude is almost parallel to the surface, so we would say horizontal attitude, almost a little pitched down into the atmosphere, 50 kilometers of altitude above the ocean. You can see from the little scheme in the lower part of the display that the Starship is pitching up and down, trying to brake and to diminish its speed, but it's still more than 300 kilometers flying through the atmosphere at 1 kilometers above the ground. We are for sure in the final phases, and as we can see now, the images are not very clear, but it has probably splashed down now in the water. Yes, now it is in vertical configuration, and it has probably splashed down. We know that the splashdown was almost nominal, and we don't know what happened for sure. Okay, now is the official splashdown of the spacecraft with the perfect flipping maneuver, landing vertically into the water, and then for sure they are deep water far from the coast of the Indian Ocean. So now the spacecraft is going deep into the water, and the mission was a success, both under the booster point of view and the Starship point of view. People are very happy on the SpaceX side, and also spectators have gone wild into this hour and 6 minutes and 30 seconds of flight time, and Starship demonstrated to be very successful into the testing phase. And also, as said in another video, into our latest update, Elon Musk said that again still 4 flights are foreseen for the 2024. The main obstacle now is the Federal Aviation Administration, which could not give the flight license to SpaceX to perform their intended flights. And now, before saying goodbye, I just invite you to visit our website, which is SpaceInfo.club. So you can access a lot of content for free, a lot of articles, a lot of free content, but also I strongly invite you to join the club, which again is free. You can just become a member in a few clicks, just giving your email. No name, no surname, no personal data will be raised by us, and so you can access the magazine and also all the other exclusive content for the members. But being a member again is completely free, so I strongly invite you to visit www.spaceinfo.club. Enjoy the club. Let's see you there, and in the next video. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.